Hey there, I'm Brooke Thomas. Thanks for joining us here on The Conversation. Let's introduce you to our next guest, Erica Vladimer, congressional candidate for New York's 12th District. Erica, good evening. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Brooke.
I am excited to talk to you. First off, let our viewers know, why are you running for Congress?
Well, I'm running for Congress because I know first government shuts out the very voices that we should be having at the seat of the table. When I co-founded the sexual harassment working group, it was because I had experienced harassment by my former boss, who was a very powerful senator at that time. And I decided to come out because I didn't want it to happen to anybody else. So by co-founding this group with 6 other survivors, we started pounding on that door and making sure that those legislators were going to listen to us and give us a seat at the table. They were trying to pass these laws in our name without talking to one victim. And we knew that they weren't going to protect us. And while we were able to change the narrative, in those few months, not much else had changed. And what it really took was that upcoming September 2018 primary, when a new generation of leaders were voted into the state Senate. So this is senators like Senator Julia Salazar, Alessandra Biaggi, Zelmer Myrie, Andrew Bernardis, Jessica Ramos. And they stood by us. They stood shoulder to shoulder with us and recognized that we deserved that seat at that table. And they called for that as well. And it was really powerful working with them. And together we were able to overhaul the human rights law for the first time in a generation. And the first step that we took, which was the most important step, was holding public hearings. This was the first public hearing. Actually, there was 2 of them. There were the 2 public hearings, the first time in 27 years, about sexual harassment in the workplace. And that gave victims the opportunity to be heard in a public forum and have their experiences on the record, to comment on legislation that was going to impact their lives on a daily basis. That is what government is supposed to do. And that is what we deserve in Congress. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to help bring that to Congress. I went to law school because I knew that government can be a force for nature and a force for good and for reform. And then I worked in the New York State Senate to get that firsthand experience. And I just left a job with the city's independent budget office where I worked on education policy. And all of this together makes me the best candidate out there to bring a new voice for District 12.
And I want to ask you about what you just mentioned, being sexually harassed, because you have been very open about this and very strong about this. Can you talk a little bit about what happened and your experience after the fact? Do you feel you were protected as you should have been?
Yeah, I definitely was not protected. And unfortunately, I am not alone in this. As I mentioned, I co-founded the sexual harassment working group with 6 other women who were also either harassed, assaulted, or retaliated against by state elected or appointed officials. So there was a huge systemic problem inside government, inside the New York State Capitol, when it came to harassment and discrimination. When I first left my job, I was really ashamed of what happened. And it would take the Me Too movement reviving and seeing all the stories about Harvey Weinstein for me to realize that the first step in me being able to help protect workers, especially those in the New York State legislature, was to tell my story. And by working with other survivors, with coalition building, with experts and advocates, we were able to put out a policy paper that gave probably much stronger recommendations than what was passed in 2018. And then working with, like I said, this new generation of elected officials, we were able to hold these public hearings and really empower the people who were shut out from the very beginning, who were hurt by the system that was supposed to protect them. And we gave them that space because that's what we deserved as victims. That's what we all deserve from our government, is to have that space to talk to them about how these new laws are going to impact our daily lives. And that's how we got some of the strongest laws in the nation.
That's great. I know workplace protections, that's a major part of your platform. I want to talk about some other aspects, some other things that are important to you. Education, right?
Yeah, education is definitely one of my top priorities next to workplace protections. I went to law school to focus on education policy and trying to change it from the inside in government. And when I was in the New York State Senate, I worked on education. And then again, when I was with the city's independent budget office. And, we know that there's a huge inequality, system that is affecting so many students, not just here in New York City, but across the country. And I really want to get to the heart of that and look at different funding streams. There's this one, Title 1A, which is the largest federal funding stream from to schools and school districts. I think we need to really reevaluate that and also increase the funding. And then also increasing protections and protecting the civil rights of students, whether it's because they're in special education or looking and monitoring the disproportionate use of school suspensions.
What about paid parental leave? That's another major part of your platform, right?
Yeah, it is. I think paid parental leave is really important. I think expanding that to a paid family leave and making sure that it's inclusive for everybody. So not just somebody who gives birth biologically, but someone who chooses to adopt. Same-sex couples. If you have a family member who is ill, a parent, paid family leave should be extended to those types of situations. I have a twin sister who she and her husband have a baby, Brindley, who is the light of my life. And, being able to see that, they had to think about these types of things of what kind of access do they have to paid parental leave. And it shouldn't have to be a one or the other. They shouldn't have to say, any family shouldn't have to say, can I put food on the table while also bonding with my child? It should be both. And we have the opportunity in Congress to give that to families across the country.
Where do you stand on Medicare for All?
I'm 100% for Medicare for All. I was very sick as a child, and even to this day, I suffer from endometriosis.
Oh, wow.
And, knowing that anytime I was taking a new job and having to wait those 3 months before my health insurance kicked in, making sure that the health insurance that I was going to have access to was going to cover all the specialists that I was going to see, the surgery, the medication, how much was I going to have to pay out of my paycheck in order to do that? It's something that I know on a personal level is so incredibly stressful, on top of trying to deal with a very painful illness. And then seeing how my parents were really fortunate to have health insurance that covered a lot of all my tests and hospital stays when I was a kid. No parent should ever have to choose whether or not their child can get a test or medication or be seen by a doctor. That money thought should never be there. Everybody deserves guaranteed health care.
What about criminal justice reform? What are your plans there?
I really believe in so many things that Tiffany Caban, who actually just ran for Queens District Attorney, was fighting for. And we're seeing a lot now that there's been much more focus on district attorney races across the country. We definitely need to end cash bail. It's just another step in criminalizing poverty. We also need to end mandatory minimums. We need to close down for-profit prisons. And we also need to make sure that we're investing more money into programs that divert people from the prisons and into, drug rehabilitation programs or mentoring programs, vocational programs, so that this way recidivism is much lower than what we're seeing today.
Erica Vladimer, running for Congress in New York's 12th District. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and I think your website info, it's erica4ny.com, right?
Correct. And you can follow me at Erica4NY on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well.
Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.